Welcome to Raising the Curve, a podcast designed to teach you everything you need to know to be better with your money. In the wise words of Amy Schumer, we're slipping carrots into the brownie recipe.
I don't really get the saying.
It's kind of like eating vegetables that actually taste good. You know, like putting
Still
carrot
not
in the
with
brownie
you.
recipe.
Are you on the script?
It's basically like saying investing in finance can be boring as but it totally doesn't need to be.
Okay. So we're making it fun by putting the carrot, aka the vegetables, which are good for you, into the brownie recipe.
Okay, we got there, okay.
Okay.
Wow, you've really got a finance brain.
Yeah, one of us has to.
This is true. Okay, come and learn alongside me from Vic Harris, ex-fund manager, where I'm going to ask all the questions that you wish you could.
And I'm going to be eating all the brownie you wish you could.
No, that's so not the joke, Vic.
Oh.
Okay, just come and talk and learn and laugh with us because together we really can raise the curve. So this is something that we have had quite a few messages about in terms of, I want to say requests, like the DJ requests.
Yeah.
I'm just going to read out something that Holly sent through to us as a DM on Instagram. Okay. Kia ora, Kiwi listening to your podcast in Aussie. Firstly, honestly, guys, actually it says girls, love the pod so much. You're doing such an incredible job. I'm not making this up.
Yeah, I was like, it doesn't actually say that. So it's just like,
I'm learning so much and already so much less stressed about money. I used to be a bit of a financial mess and podcasts like yours have truly changed my life.
oh, amazing.
I know, we love you.
Pat ourselves on the back.
My question is about moving to London. I'd love to know how you decided to do it and how much money you took over there and how you balance living in the now and trying to be fiscally responsible. Fiscally, like I never even knew what that means, like financially responsible. Maybe you've already done an episode on this, and if you could send me in the right direction, that would be great. I'm currently in a city I'm not loving and desperate to have a London experience,
Come on over.
but wanting to know how to do it like financially responsibly would be amazing. Love hard.
We have honestly probably got about 10 of those messages, I
Yeah,
reckon, since
maybe
we
even
moved
more.
over here. Yeah.
So many people want to know. And I think it's quite interesting because, well, firstly, we'll get into this in a second, but preparing to move overseas financially is actually, I think you learn a lot when you're on the ground. I don't think you know a lot before you get there. And so hopefully this episode will help anyone planning on moving to London to do it a little bit more prepared from a financial perspective. But also I think the same rules or I guess tips and advice in this episode apply wherever you're moving to.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's also sometimes quite a lot of build up of like moving overseas. And then you kind of get here and you're like, oh, not like you're unappreciative or let down, but it's just like I remember when I moved to Australia and I was at immigration and you get these little orange immigration docs that you fill out. It's like your name, address, what you do. And then it was like, are you permanently immigrating to Australia? And I was like, yes. Ticked it and like proudly walked over, handed it over to the immigration guy. He's like, next. I was like,
Where are the balloons?
I was like, this is my
Celebrate
big
me.
move. This is my big move overseas. And I was probably one of a million Kiwis that was moving to Australia. But yeah, I just think it's like sometimes moving overseas is built up a lot more than like what it actually is once you get here. Once you get here, you kind of slot in. Yes, there's a whole lot of things you have to pay for to get like set up, etc., which we'll go through. But like it's exciting. It's fun. You're in a new city. It's awesome. I think it's like childbirth. Not that I've been through it.
I'm really waiting to hear
but
how you compare this.
how you can talk to as many women as you want to try and prepare yourself for that event. Everyone has such a different experience that you can't prepare in a way that will make you have the same experience as anyone else. You're going to have such a different experience yourself. It's exactly the same as moving overseas. You can talk to as many people as you want, but your experience is going to be so unique, and it's what you make out of it is
I
what's
also
important.
think that like to
Did
that.
you like that analogy?
Yep,
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
good. I also think the analogy is good in the sense that you can plan till the cows come home. There's a lot that's out of your control. And so if I was to use an example of a really good friend of mine over here, she was working for Meta. She had a reasonably well-paid job. She was enjoying it. And then all of those like tech cuts happened. And remember, like, I don't know, maybe it was like a year ago and a lot of people in the tech space lost their jobs.
Yes, yeah. Post-COVID, they did this massive hire before COVID, and then post-COVID revenue and demand for their products wasn't as high. So they laid off staff, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so because she was a contractor, she basically finished pretty immediately. And she worked in marketing. So she immediately started looking for jobs. And it took her like 5 or 6 months to find a new one. And she's super talented, really smart, like an awesome person. Like you'd be lucky to have her at your company, but she just couldn't find work. I guess like in the analogy you used around having a baby and you're planning for your birth, there's some people that will land in 2 weeks, they might get a job in a new country. It might take them a year. You just don't know. And so I think it's like you almost do want to have a few backup plans. And this is something we'll get into with the financial plan of moving overseas.
And I think that's totally it. It's like you need to plan for it taking you 6 months or a year to find a job. Then if you do get it in 2 weeks, amazing. You can put that money into investments or into your emergency fund.
Or it's thinking, okay, I can support myself up until say 3 months without getting work. If at that point my funds or my moving to insert country plan gets to $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever your threshold is where it starts to make you nervous, maybe it's at that point you're like, okay, I haven't got a job in my industry. I'll do some temp work just to kind of like keep myself at bay. Like there's many different ways that you can go about it, but I think it's just having those conversations with yourself before you move.
Yeah.
So that you're prepared for worst case scenario. So if it does happen, it's not too scary. Vic, when we decided to come over here, maybe it's worth us just giving some context because I came over for 2 summers before I actually moved. So I didn't really plan financially either of those. I mean, let's be honest, I didn't do a huge amount of planning any of the times. But for you had a first stint in London, which was last summer, and we did 5 months. And then we moved officially this year, like 3-4 months ago. The first time, like in terms of the summer sabbatical last year, what kind of financial plans did you put in place? How are you feeling personally? And then like, can we compare that to the official move?
Yeah, well, last year we were only supposed to be coming for like 4 months and it ended up being 6. So there was a bit of a spanner in my financial plan. Plus I was still paying a mortgage in New Zealand because we were only going for a couple of months. There was no point renting out my house. And then that couple of months turned into 6. So it was like, that was one of the reasons I had to go home. I was like, I cannot pay for London rent and a mortgage in New Zealand any longer. And I remember you being like, but we've got all these opportunities. I was like, I'm sorry, babe. I was like,
I'm bleeding money. I remember you saying that.
Bleeding money. And yes, I had to dip into my investments. Like it was a whole thing. And I think in reflection, it's like, I don't know. It's hard to say because I'm more of a planner than you, and there was opportunities that we had to stay for. So it's almost like you're just kind of a bit like, ugh, I know this is going to be a short-term financial stab for a long-term benefit of the curve. Do you know what I mean? I could have put my foot down and be like, no, my plan is only for 4 months. It's all I can afford financially. But I think having investments allowed me to be like, I know it's not the right thing to do, but this is an incredible opportunity just to say for another couple of months, yes, it's going to impact me financially, but long term it's going to be more beneficial. That was my thinking.
So interesting to hear as well, because I remember, I think some of the things that were happening at the time were we were invited to speak at Oxford, which was like, holy shit. There was quite a few things like that came up.
Yeah.
And I remember it being just like a total no-brainer. Like, why would we not stay, And you sort of said lightly, but you didn't go into much detail in terms of this, which is it's so interesting to hear in hindsight, because I think I now understand so much more, even just from what you've said around the hesitancy and like dragging your feet kind of when you were like, no. And I didn't really totally understand why, because I didn't have anything holding me back financially.
Yeah.
I didn't have a financial plan. So I was very much throw caution to the wind, whereas you had planned financially for 4 months. And that would have really spun things out a lot in terms of what you then would have to spend, because not renting your house out meant you were paying double rent, right?
Yeah, I was spending a lot. I think if I'd just done it like fast forward to this year and it's like, right, we're permanently moving. I need someone in there that's going to fully cover my mortgage because I don't know when I'm coming back and I don't want to be in the position I was in last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the lesson is that I'm glad I had my investments to fall back on, and I know that's not something that we preach, but in that case, it was
your safety net.
Yeah. So I'm going to run through a few tips that we wanted to relay to you guys that have helped us in our move to London and hopefully will help other people, because there's about 90,000 Kiwis that move to London every year. That's like crazy. Crack.
So you should say crack? What's going on? Incredible.
Crazy.
No, I think also if you think about then the amount of people that are moving to Australia or Europe
totally,
or other
yeah.
parts of the world, I would say there's a shitload of people, particularly in the millennial space, that are like either nearing their 30s, starting to be like, I'm not ready to like settle and put roots down. I want to go live somewhere else. And I think that's really exciting.
There's been mass exoduses. Wow.
There's been
a mass exodus from New Zealand in the last year. It's at an 11-year high of people leaving the country because wages are terrible, the price of groceries is terrible, just the opportunities are terrible. So New Zealand, sort your shit out.
Did you feel, just before we get into some of these tips, being at an age where a lot of our friends are either having kids or getting married or doing the classic like staying in New Zealand, was there a part of you that thought financially, or I don't know, I guess in any capacity where you were like, you know how you're saying it's not a big deal to move countries at the start of the episode?
I know, I love how
for you it really was.
I know.
Because I remember you were stressing balls about it, and a lot of your friends and family were making it into a massive deal too.
I think that's just from a place of they don't want you to leave. They want you near home and you're literally on the other side of the world. But I think you just get comfortable, and comfort's fine. A lot of people love that. But I think what you gain experience-wise and opportunity-wise for our business of moving overseas, like I think I could see that in the back of my mind, but I was like, this wasn't part of the plan, you know? And it's like, I just think now in reflection, I'm like, oh, why didn't I come sooner?
Yeah.
Which is such a good place to be.
Yeah.
Rather than like, I want to go home.
So awkward. Literally moved the company to be a UK business and Vic's like,
I want to go home.
bye.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get started on some of these tips. So what is your number one when moving countries tip to prepare yourself financially?
To add some GST to your budget. And I don't mean literal GST. You know when someone's like, oh, she's added GST to that story.
Yeah.
It's like she's embellished it and she's made it a bit, buffed it up a bit. That's what I mean with your budget. I think there's always, like we're kind of talking to, there's always going to be things that you don't put in your budget that prop up, that you want to take advantage of, whatever. Like, for example, getting a flat, you have to pay a deposit. And when you're moving country, there's a lot of setup costs, like paying for a deposit for a flat, setting up your phone, setting up your internet, like all of that. And there's little fees in there that you kind of might not budget for. So you might not know. For example, also, you are coming to a foreign country, you might not have pay slips in that country, you might not have income in that country yet. So like for me, I had to pay 3 months up front in terms of rent just to get the place. So I was like,
how much is that? That's a lot.
about £10,000.
Shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Had you budgeted
But
for
otherwise
that?
I would have had to stay somewhere and get an Airbnb or something, you know,
and
like,
actually pay more than
and pay
that.
more. So it was kind of like, okay, I'll just, I think this is why, it's also about timing. When can you financially move? You might want to move this year, but that's not financially viable. So let's save up and have a plan and a budget for you to move next year. Because otherwise you're going to get here, you're not going to be able to afford those things, and you're going to end up going home.
I also think, as a side note, a cheaper option is to not sign a lease.
Yes.
If you have
You can
friends
sublet.
or every country has like a subletting website. So I guess the point is, if you're signing a lease, you might have to fork out a decent amount in advance. If you're not, a cheaper way would be to take over someone else's room in a sublet situation.
Yes. The best thing to do in any situation with this, with any budget, any financial plan, is to take the most conservative, or try your best to do 3 months. Yeah, because you don't want to get in a situation where you're like, oh shit, now I have to pay a deposit and I can't afford it. Yeah, don't try and set a budget like to the dollar.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's what I used to do.
Yeah.
And
it's like,
yes, oh my God, that is actually it's a very obvious tip, but I actually think a lot of people
like
might not do that.
Another really good thing to be aware of is like the exchange rate moves around. So like if you had decided, right, I need 5,000 New Zealand dollars to move to London, that would be £2,300 now. Whereas if you'd moved to London February last year, that would have been £2,600. So you've got an extra £300 there, which is about 600 Kiwi dollars.
Which is actually a lot.
Which is a lot. But so if you'd saved up to the dollar, you get here and you're like, oh shit, where's that £300 gone? You know, and it's just lost in the
buffer
of the exchange rate. So yeah.
Okay, tip number 2. Let's move on. What would be your second tip if you're moving country financially, planning?
When you get here, I would say talk to as many British people as you can. What deals, what are some really good platforms that give you discounts, like all of that, and just sign up to them all. Our British friend was Emily.
Emily, come here, would you? She's
"Not
like,
again."
stop giving me cameos in the podcast. But it is true.
Yeah.
Locals know what's up. You don't
Like, I
know
was
that till
sitting-
you're here.
Emily's like, well, get your rail card. What about your rail card? I was like,
Yeah.
what rail card? And I was just like, wow.
It's also just really easy to forget about that kind of thing because we use it every single day. And then it's like, oh shit, yeah, I should probably let these things on.
So can you explain the rail card, please?
Okay, so the rail card is 30% off of off-peak travel in and outside of London. So it's basically anywhere in the UK. And they have these deals on where it's like 16 to 20, 21 to 25, like 26 to 30. There's basically everybody's
What about
included.
30 to 35?
Yeah. You're included as well, don't worry. And so, yeah, it's unless you're going in like peak traveling times, which is in the morning when everyone else is commuting and like 5 o'clock, then you've got 30% off. You pay, I think it's like £30 for a whole year or like 70 for 3 years. And you just instantly make it back. If you go like to Brighton or up north somewhere, you've like instantly made all that money back.
And what about lunches?
Oh, the Tesco meal deal.
I only just found out about the test. I cannot believe no one told me about this
I came
sooner.
back from a meeting and the three of them in the Curve team had the drink, the sandwich and the snack. And I was like, oh, someone's taking advantage of a Tesco meal deal.
It is just, yeah, it's so good. It's £3.50. If you have a Tesco club card, it's £3.50 for a drink, a snack of your choice, and like a sandwich or a pasta or a wrap.
She doesn't work for Tesco.
I know, yeah. Which is making me very hungry as well. Yeah.
What other hot tips have we got to share?
I think ClassPass is something that I've definitely got onto. I used it a bit in New Zealand and it is a global thing. But here it was just like the exorbitant, oh my gosh, really struggling today. Exorbitant price of like workout classes like Pilates, etc.
It's like £30 for Pilates over here, which is 60 New Zealand. It's
honestly
ridiculous.
like outrageous. Like I may as well just try and sneak in. Imagine. Reminds me of Bridesmaids when they're in the park trying to like copy the class.
yeah.
And he's like, I can see you. And they're like, we're dancing. Anyway, yeah. If you don't use ClassPass, you're honestly paying an arm and a leg for Pilates reformer classes, which then there's no point if you're paying an arm and a leg.
Do you guys also use meal deal services in your houses for like...
Oh, yes. Oh, Gusto. Honestly, it is £30 for 5 meals.
For one person?
For one person.
That is so much cheaper than
It's
buying
like 40
groceries.
for 2 people. Like I'm thinking I might just do 2 and just cook once and have it for lunch.
That's so cheap.
Yeah, take that Tesco meal deal. Yeah.
So essentially what you're saying is get in touch with locals.
Yeah, I think the thing is you're in a big city. There is so many deals going on. It's just you have to talk to people, figure out, just do your research kind of thing.
I think also remembering that everyone has moved countries before. Everyone knows what it's like to be new and a bit broke and trying to figure it out. Whether it's having to stay on someone's couch or asking someone if they've got any hot tips that are going to help you save money, everyone gets it.
And I think little things just add up, saving a couple of pounds here and there definitely adds up. Even if someone, like the other day, someone was like, oh, do you want a coffee card? Your 5th one's free. And in New Zealand, I don't know why, but I'm like, oh, no. Whereas here, I was like, yes, please. Probably because, if I convert it, it's like I'm paying $6.
Just always lose the card.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, tip number 3.
Groceries are in, restaurants are out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of flowing on from the gusto conversation is actually eating out here is way more expensive than buying groceries.
Yeah.
And that will be different depending on where you're moving to, but particularly in the UK, if you were to compare grocery prices to New Zealand, it's way cheaper.
Like I just remember having such anxiety going to the supermarket in New Zealand. Like I'd buy like 4 things and spend $120, and I was just... You kind of get to the point where you're like, well, I may as well eat out because it's just it's much of a muchness. Whereas here, honestly, the fruit and veg, it's so good. It's so cheap. I mean, I feel like people in the UK might not think it's cheap, but I guess we're coming from New Zealand where it was way more expensive. So it's all
$150 for
relative.
an
Yeah.
apple.
So like here, like strawberries, they're like
Yeah,
£2.
you and your berries. Oh,
Honestly, yeah, my flatmate Antonia is like, berries again. I'm like, honestly, it's like Christmas. We only get them in summertime in New Zealand, so they're like a delicacy. Whereas here, it's like,
If anyone wants to get Vic a present, go for raspberries
Yeah.
or blueberries. She'll love you forever.
yeah. Well, maybe I'll just smuggle them back. Maybe I'll start a side hustle, smuggle back strawberries to New Zealand.
You'll get those dogs chasing you at the airport. It'd be so stressful.
Yeah, true.
Do you have anything to declare? No, like a full case of raspberries. If that was me, something would happen where it's like they've defrosted on the plane and it's dripping out raspberry juice on my way through. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way I'd get away with something like that.
Yuck.
What would be tip number 4?
Tip number 4.
I bet this is one you don't. This is the tax, isn't it? Just tell by your exhale.
Yeah.
Becky does anything she can to avoid this topic.
I know. I'm like, get your own advice. Get your own tax advice. Tax. I think just growing up in one country, you kind of learn tax by osmosis. Whereas over here, I'm just like, oh my goodness. And we've started doing like payroll. We've now got staff at the Curve. We've got accountants. They sent me this piece of paper and it was honestly like a foreign language. And I was like, Vic, you fucking work in finance. Sort it out. And just like staring at all these numbers on the screen. And there was like a tax code and national insurance. There was personal allowance. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And then sent it off to all the staff going, here's your pay slips.
No one knows what they're looking
And then
at.
they came back with all these questions. I was like, damn it. So
Maybe as an aside, we could do how to read your pay slip in the
Yeah.
UK as a separate thing because I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah. So it's just, there is things called a tax code, which is your tax percentage, but it's in code form. It's not like as a percentage. And there's things like national insurance, which is what you pay for your state pension, but it's not called state pension. It's called national insurance. Just like all these terminologies you have to figure out. And then you also don't pay tax on your first £12,570. So then again, like our first pay slips would be like, oh my God, amazing. We got so much money in the bank.
Well, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah, sorry.
What the hell?
I know. So that's why it's so hard to budget.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
I
know.
can't believe you didn't tell me that. I was really
Sorry.
excited. Okay, can you just explain? So national insurance number, which often is abbreviated to NIN,
Yeah.
you need to apply online for that.
When
and
you get to
need
the new
it
country, yep. When you get to London.
As soon as you get to London, if London's where you're moving, apply for that. And wherever you're moving to, figure out if that's something you need to do because you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you get a job and they're like, what's your national insurance number or whatever the equivalent to that is and you don't have one. Because speaking from experience, it took mine ages to come through. And Vic was like, do you have it? Do you have it? And I was like, no, I don't. Okay, you didn't tell me to.
No, I was like, so do you have a national insurance number? She's like, yeah. And I was like, wow, that's I'll get mine then. Shit. I was like, you're really onto it. 3 months later, I was like, hey babe, where's that national insurance number? Oh, what are you talking about? I was like, oh God, here we go. But again, it's just so confusing because it's like there's just so many numbers and
so
codes.
tax
and
code
like,
do they have to apply for?
No, it's just like what your tax rate is due to what you earn.
And are there different brackets in the UK? Like, how does it work? Not sure.
No.
Okay.
Skip
Well,
that.
basically, it'll be similar to New Zealand, right? Or the more you earn,
the more you
you're taxed.
earn, the more you pay. Yeah, that's kind of a
And you can't do anything
tiered
about it.
approach. Yeah, I mean, you could. Yeah, no, you can't do anything about it. Unfortunately, tax. And the fifth one.
Wait, quickly, on the pension front in the UK, or if you're overseas and you have the option to not put money into your pension,
Don't do it.
saver, etc., should you not do it?
No,
Why?
you should always put money into your pension.
Oh, I thought you were saying you shouldn't. And I was like, what? So I guess my
Sorry,
thing is a lot
was
of
it-
people will move away from New Zealand and the options will be very different. If you're in the US, you've got your 401k, whatever it's called, Australia, super, the UK, pension. If there's an option to opt out, always opt in. Is that what you're
Always
saying?
opt in, yeah.
Always opt in. And is it similar, like if you're from overseas, do the same rules apply where you still won't be able to touch that money till you're, at
Yeah,
retirement
they've all got
age?
different rules. Like in New Zealand, you can take it out to get your first home. Like there's always little nuances like that. Some are 60, some are 65 when you can take it out. There's all little nuances, but yeah, most of them are locked into your 65.
And I guess before you move, a clever thing to do would be look into, do companies match the amount you put in your 20-year retirement fund? Do they? Blah, blah, blah.
And also talk to your company that's employing you.
Ask lots of questions.
Yeah, ask lots of questions. Like they'll probably have an HR department that you will be the 100th person that's asked, like it's
Do
not.
you have any employee schemes?
Yeah.
Do you contribute
What
to
does this mean? What
Yeah.
does this mean? So you really go in with your eyes wide open.
Yeah. Never be afraid to ask questions, whether
Never
it's your
be
pay
afraid.
slip or anything.
Yeah.
Okay, tip number 5.
Take advantage of all the fun, free activities. You're living in a new city. There's so much, even just getting up in the morning and just walking around.
Yeah, I love doing that in a new place.
Seeing interesting people, interesting parks, shops, cafes, restaurants, like just taking it all in. Put on some Taylor Swift, take a walk, get on a Lime bike, all of those things.
I mean, there'll be so many people that hear us mention Taylor Swift and just never listen again. They're like, lame.
Oh my God, Swifties.
Sorry, we love Taylor Swift.
Yeah, there's markets, there's museums, there's so many free activities. It's like, I think I need to take my own advice with this one a bit more.
I also think something that really helped me was to look at what I felt comfortable spending each day. So I guess if you're not, we were lucky because we moved over with work, right? So we didn't get here and have no job. But if you have budgeted for 3 months of being somewhere without having a job, what is your daily spend?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think it's, things like just getting on, if you're in London, like a double-decker bus and having a look around. As you say, going to a market, getting food and eating it in the park. Like there's so many ways to keep your costs down but still enjoy it. Because I think before you start working, you want, and hopefully by having a financial plan, it eliminates some of that kind of stress. Because when you're in a position where you're applying for work, you also want to enjoy the fact you're not working. You don't want to be, because as soon as you have a job, you automatically don't have much free time. And so it's a really good way to explore a new place. But just, put some parameters in place for yourself so that you don't go over that and then start to stress out and need to fast forward, your timeline for getting a job.
And I think it's also worth noting is to like still have a emergency fund.
Your FU fund.
An FU fund. Because like the last thing you want to do is if you're going from New Zealand to London, get on the other side of the world and then for whatever reason.
Need a tooth replacement
need
or a
to
root
go
canal.
home for, like an emergency or like, for me, I always need to have enough money to get home last minute.
Yeah.
And I think that is like a nice comforting thought that if shit hit the fan, I have enough to get home. Do you know what I mean? Like I will never spend that money because I want to get home in an emergency if I need to, or spend it on something else. But it's just more like just having that like financial stress wise is just like, for me.
Always over prepare in terms of have like 20% more than you think you need, as well as an FU fund. Your 20% extra is not your FU fund. They're two separate amounts that you need to be overcompensating should you need to.
Yeah.
Okay, all super helpful. Any, final wrap up points?
I heard someone the other day actually in our co-working space. She was on the phone to a friend or something. And I think they live in the UK, but then she'd moved to London or whatever. And she was like, you don't move to London to save money. And it was kind of like, at first I was like, what? But then I was like, you know what? I was kind of, if that works for you and you're experiencing living in a big city and all it has to offer, I was kind of like, power to you. You know what I mean? As long as you've kind of got your investments, you've got your emergency fund and you're spending your money paycheck to paycheck after that because you're prioritizing current you and experiences and opportunities, good on you. I think you also, you might be the person that comes here and wants to save money and sacrifice some of those things, and that's fine too. It's kind of figuring out what your happy is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I also think if you are pausing investing for a couple of years because it's just not in your immediate plan, you're kind of like, do you know what? I know I'm sacrificing quite a lot here by not investing, but for me, this is priority. I think that's fine if it's a conscious decision you've made. If you're making it because you're like, well, I know I'm going to start investing again in 2 years or whatever, fine. But it's just like realizing that that's a decision you've made.
It's coming to terms with it mentally. It's like, you know what? I'm fine with this. It's fine. Rather than being forced into a situation like that and being like, oh my gosh, I don't have any money and now I can't. Yeah, I think making a conscious decision.
What I would also say is asking yourself the question when you're moving overseas, are you moving for career, for personal, for financial? What's the reason? Because if you came somewhere like London and you normally work in marketing, but you get over here and you realize that, the average salary for a marketing coordinator is £30,000 a year. And that's like just enough to live here. You may or may not be able to afford travel. It might be a situation where you think, do you know what? I'm moving to London for the experience. I'm going to move into an industry that pays me better for these 2 years so that I can live the kind of life I want. realizing it's not a step forward in the career I want to be doing. You know, I think there's lots of decisions that you can make based on the kind of experience you want overseas.
Yeah.
And then look for work that will support whatever that decision or plan is. Because like for you, it might be like, I wouldn't want to move overseas if it meant sacrificing doing what I love. Even if it pays me shit, I want to stay doing that. But you might not feel like that. You might be like, I actually just want to move overseas and actually save a shitload of money. So I'm going to move into finance, or I'm going to move into this. You know, it's like there's so many decisions and options to make. And also I think my final thing would be like, I understand the idea of not wanting to go and take a bar job if that's not in your plan, or work in a cafe or do temp work. But if you're getting to a point where you're starting to feel stressed about your finances and you're at that threshold where you start noticing that it affects your behavior and your emotions in all sorts of like aspects of your life, find something short term that's going to bridge that gap. Because
that's true. Yeah.
I just think you need to know yourself and you need to know that limit. And when you start to get into like panic mode, and if you're getting into panic mode, find a short-term solution to tide you over, you know,
like looking after dogs.
Yes. Oh my God, this is another of Emily's suggestions. There's an app called Rover in London where you can dog sit and get like £60 a day.
Yeah, amazing.
Outrageous. Also, I heard there's a random, sorry, this is kind of off track, but there's a rabbit hotel where someone's decided to set up where there's like 35 rabbits that can go and you pay £35 a day. They're making bank, like nearly $1 million a year on this rabbit hotel. I mean, get creative. You never know.
Oh my God, start your own rabbit hotel. There we have it.
That
is the advice for today. Thank you. Over and out.
Over and out. Thank you so much for listening to Raising the Curve. These conversations are designed to teach you everything that you need to know to be better with your money, from saving to investing to talking to your friends about your salaries.
And if you liked what you heard, we would love it if you could hit the subscribe button, please.
Yes,
or
please.
Better yet, leave a review. It'll only take 5 seconds and it would really make our week, our year, our month.
Okay. Lots of love. See you soon.
Bye.